President Akufo-Addo has hit back at former President John Mahama over his recent comments that government was packing the country's judiciary with known NPP activists. Mr. Mahama, at an NDC legal conference, accused Nana Akufo-Addo's administration of filling the courts with known sympathizers of the NPP to avoid accountability. But speaking at the 23rd Annual Ghana Bar Conference in Cape Coast, Nana Akufo-Addo said such statements are dangerous for the country's democracy. Citi News' Samiria Faye has more.
The former president has in recent times launched a series of attacks on the judiciary over what he describes as bias in their rulings and judgments. Mr. Mahama says the judiciary has become attached to the NPP, doubting its role of being neutral. At an NDC forum of lawyers recently, Mr. Mahama accused the president of packing the country's judiciary with NPP judges who are sympathetic towards the party.
Often when we have come out of elections and we have won, everybody wants to go into the executive. Our lawyers, please, I beg you, some of you must be prepared to go onto the bench. And I know that some have very lucrative legal practices. They don't want to leave those practices and go on the bench. But, I mean, you can see what the current president has done. He's appointed the biggest number of judges onto the bench. It's more than 80 towards 100 and counting. He's packed the courts. And we know that they've packed the courts because they want to avoid accountability after they have left office. And so all manner of people who are known to have been partisan, to have been executives of their party, who are in the legal profession, are being leapfrogged into the superior courts and other places. And so we must be prepared as NDC legal persons to also go onto the bench so that we can balance out, the judiciary. Currently, the judiciary is packed with NPP inclined judges because this government has carried out a deliberate policy of putting their people on the bench. And so I encourage some of you to look at careers on the bench so that we can balance out what the current situation is.
But President Akufo-Addo disagrees. He says this comment by former President Mahama is an affront to the country's democracy.
In the overwhelming number of cases of justices designate to the Supreme Court, that approval has been given on a bipartisan basis. You can count on the fingers of a hand the number of justices designate whose approval meant less than unanimous consent. I've gone into this matter in some detail because of a new concept that has been recently introduced into our public discourse by no less a public figure than the fourth president of the Fourth Republic, the perennial NDC presidential candidate, John Dramani Mahama, who has told the world that I have packed the courts with so-called NPP judges, and that one of the key purposes of a putative NDC victory in 2024 will be to enable him balance the courts with so-called NDC judges. Not only are these concepts of, quote, MPP and, quote, NDC judges new in our public discourse, they are also extremely dangerous and represent the most brazen attack on the independence of the judiciary by an allegedly responsible politician of the Fourth Republic. They provide another reason, if more were needed, why right-thinking citizens should ensure the defeat in 2024 of the man whom the first special prosecutor identified as government official #1 in the still unresolved Airbus bribery scandal.
On the fight against corruption, President Akufo-Addo says his administration has done enough to fight the canker compared to other governments under the Fourth Republic. He says the creation of the Office of the Special Prosecutor and his current prosecution of alleged corrupt officials are clear enough to see.
It is not my job to clear or convict any person accused of wrongdoing or of engaging in acts of corruption. That is the job of the courts and the law enforcement agencies. My job is to act on allegations of corruption by referring the issue or issues to the proper investigative agencies for the relevant inquiry and action, including, if necessary, the suspension of the affected official pending the conclusion of investigations. That is exactly what has been done since I assumed the mantle of leadership on 7th January 2017. From the allegations against the then Minister-designate for Energy, Boakye Jako, at his parliamentary confirmation hearings in 2017, to that against the former CEO of BOST, the Honorable Alfred Obeng, to those against the then two Deputy Chiefs of Staff at the Office of the President, Honorable Francis Asenso Boakye and Honorable Samuel Abujinapo, to the conflict of interest allegations against the Minister for Finance, Ken Ofori-Atta, to the claims of extortion against the then Trade and Industry Minister-designate, Alan Chremateng, at his parliamentary confirmation hearings in 2017. They have all been investigated, and in most cases, cleared by the authorized institutions of the state and not by President Akufo-Addo. The latest episode involving the former Minister for Sanitation and Water Resources, the Honorable Citi Abna Dapa, is evident for all to see.